We are recording.
Welcome everyone to our class on how to learn Torah, and of course how to learn Torah, Shabbat, Peh, Gemara. We're giving a little introduction to explain our approach. The foundation of what I'm trying to demonstrate is that the Torah is compressed information from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law, is the keys to decompress the information. Now, in case someone should think, where did I get this idea from? Well, I got it from the Chumash and Rashi. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to get the 10 Commandments, it says, V'yoma Hashem el Moshe, alei alai hahara. He says to Moshe, come up to me on Mount Sinai, v'haya sham, and you'll be there, v'etnen lecha es luchos ha'even v'hatorah. I'll give you these tablets of stone, and the Torah, v'hamitzvahs asher katafti l'horasam, and the Torah and the mitzvahs which I wrote for you to teach. Rashi says, "Et haluchas ha'evn v'hatorah mitzvahs asher katafti l'horasam, kol sheish ma'os v'shlosh esrei mitzvahs b'chlal eser dibursen." He says that all the 613 mitzvahs are included, and I would use my word compressed, a modern word, and or encoded in the Esed Dibros. And then Rashi goes on to bring the Sajid Goin and demonstrate. He says, look over there and you'll see how the Sajid Goin explained it and how he did it. So the point is that this idea of compressing information goes so far that all our 613 mitzvahs can be compressed into that 10 commandments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. So our job is to decompress the words, decompress the message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the highly compressed state into a state that we can use it. And that's really our introduction. The introduction is, what type of tools do we have? Well, first of all, to realize that the message that we're reading is a highly compressed message, and two, to demonstrate the methods that we're going to use in order to open up the Torah and to understand its message in all its detail. So we got a very interesting point. Let me flip down to, oh, that's not me anyway, is he? Okay. We said like this: the Mishnah, the first Mishnah, in Baba Kama says that there's Arba Avos Nezikin, and we brought. Oh, I'm sorry, it's wrong. Oops, that's again wrong. Okay, not getting the right things today. What we did was we brought our Mishnah and Rev Oshia and Rev Chia, and they brought down that there's either 13. Let me get that for you. Okay, I don't have it up here. Let me just get it for you. Oops. Oops. Okay. No, that's it. That's not what I want. I'm sorry. I thought I had it up and I didn't. Bum, 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 bum. Guess that's not it either. Where did it go? Okay. Okay. The point is, I'll say it outside. The point is that the Mishnah says that there's 4 avos nezikin, and Rav Oshia says that besides the 4 we can add another 9. That means 13. And Rav Chia says besides the 9 you add, I'm going to make the number up to 24. So the Gemara asks, and each one of those statements says that there's 4 avos or 13 avos or 24 avos, depending upon if it's our Mishnah or Rav Chia. So the Gemara wants to know why Rav Chia and Rav Oshia use the word avos when speaking about their examples, because a lot of their examples had nothing to do with avos. They were Shomrim. Shomer does not have any derivatives. Like Mishnah, like in Karen. Oops, someone came in. Mishnah in Karen has derivatives.
Yeah, I think Ellie joined.
But Ellie just joined in.
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning.
Hello, Ellie. Are you with us?
Yeah, good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. Okay. Hi, Ellie. We got off to a little rough start anyway, so Baruch Hashem. Basically, it's like this. We have our Mishnah said there's Arba Avos, and Rav Oshia and Rav Chia said that there was 13 and 24 Avos. So the Gemara wanted to know why the term avos was applied by Rav Chia and Rav Oshia, since a lot of their cases do not have derivatives. The only ones that have derivatives are our cases. For instance, Karen means kavanah l'hazik. So in the Torah it says if a shore gores, but the derivative is if he kicks, which also has kavanah, which also has intent, even though it's not written. So that's derived from it because it has the same principle. So the Gemara wants to know, understands our Mishnah. There's an Av, that's what's written in the Torah, and we can derive other cases once we understand what the principle of the Av is. In this case, kavanah will produce kicking or squatting or biting another animal. But Rav Chia and Rav Oshia, the cases that they add, do not have avos. So he used an improper word, or they used an improper word to describe their cases. So the Gemara answers that, oh, here it is. This chart I was looking for. The Gemara answers that really the reason why Rav Oshia and Rav Chia use the word avos is because they are like the Av in the Mishnah. What does that mean? Just like the avos in the Mishnah, all the owner of the damager has to pay with the best of his land if he wants to pay back with land. So too, all these other cases that Rav Chia and Rav Oshia mentioned, the Shomrim, and when a man damages Nezik Tzartz, Ripui Shevis, and Tashlumi Kefil, all those cases also pay, the owner of those damagers, whether it be himself or his property, have to also pay with the best of his land. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah derived. Now, the way it derived it, the Gemara derives it that this law of Meitav spreads throughout these 26 cases, is because of a Gezerah Shava called Tachas, Nesina, Yishalem, Kesef. Now, those are the 4 words that are written in the Gemara. Tachas, Nesina, Yishalem, Kesef. Those 4 words teach us how Meitav, which is only written in the case of Shein V'Regel, that din extends to all the cases that Rav Chi and Rav Osher were. There's 24, and then there's 2 that they didn't even talk about, so it comes out to 26 cases. And it just leaves us with that statement, Tachas Nasim Yishalom Kesef. So the Rabbeinu Hananel, again, decompresses the information. Now, how did he do that? Because he has what the Gemara says, and he has what the Pesukim say in the Chumash, obviously. And he puts it together, and he shows us how that one din extends through a Gezerah Shava to all these other cases. So here in this chart, did I show you this chart last week? I don't remember if I did.
I think so, yeah. Or parts of it, anyway.
Yes, I think I did, because we got down to the next stage. Anyway, in this chart, may look a little different than what we had last week, doesn't matter. In this chart, we see that in the center here you have Shein and Regel, where it's written Meitiv Sedeo, Meitiv Karma Yishalem. That's where the law that you have to pay back with the best of your hand is expressed explicitly in the Torah. From there, it extends through a Gezerah Shava of Shalem to all these other cases around it. Okay, so in other words, it says in Keren, Shalem Yishalem Shor Tachas Ashur. So that word Shalem there and the word Shalem in Meitav Karma, Meitav Karma, Yishalem causes a link between these 2 nodes, and the information then moves from here to this case. Then that's the Yishalem case. Then from Tachas it moves to the case of man damaging another man and inflicting tsar or raping a woman, because in those pesukim, which are clearly stated in the Torah, it also uses the word tachas, ayin tachas ayin, chabura tachas chabura, or here in the case of onus, it says that the person who did the onus has to pay chamishim kesef tachas asher ona against what he did. So the bridge to those cases is through the word tachas, and then from the word tachas in this pasuk of onus, we're going to move it through the word kesev and nasan, because it says v'nasan ha'isha shalchev chamishim kesev. We're going to move it to these 2 other cases of mafata and motzi shemra and ripui and Shabbos. So that's how those 4 words are expanded and explained by Rabbeinu Hananel.
So going all the way from Shalem to Tachas, and then from Tachas to Kesef, and then from there it goes to Yitain. Okay, so it has a whole one thing leads to another.
Right. So this is a bridge, and what we have, what we can use is a language called nodes and links. If you think about that way, when you think, it's in the nervous system. You have nodes and you have links. So a node means a hub. Okay, so the central hub for this din is found in Shein V'Regel. From there, it radiates or it extends through links to all these other cases that also say the word Yishalem. Okay, and here's the Dalet Shomrim: Shomer Chinam, Shomer Sacha, Shoel, Ganav, Tashlumi, Dalet Vehei, Gazlan. They move straight through that link to these other cases, Mava and Hever and Bor. Okay, and from there it extends. That now it was interesting. The language in the Gemara says Tachas Nesini Yishalom Kesev, but we would have expected, since the main Gezerah Shava really is Yishalom, it should have started with the word Yishalom. So another message is encoded in the word, in the arrangement of the words that were said in order to transmit this information. And what I think that the message is, because it's not written in the order of prominence, is that Tachas Nesinas of Meitav, instead of giving Meitav like the Torah says in the case of Shein and Regel, you can also give Kesef. And we're going to talk about that in 1 second. But that's what the statement, I believe, has another level of meaning besides just writing the 4 elements. But whatever it is, the point is the following, that the Torah now moves its dinim, moves its laws from one case to the next through this method of Gezerah Shava. And we mentioned that Gezerah Shava is halach Moshe Sinai. No one can come along and make links because of the analogy of 2 words. If that were true, we said that the word ed is found all throughout the Torah, and it would just be one big hodgepodge. So we have a limited amount of Gezerah Shavas, which are handed down from Moshe Rabbeinu to us, and they represent links in certain cases from one pasuk to the next. And wherever we have a handed down tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu, then we use it. But beyond that, no one could take 2 analogous words in 2 different verses and put the laws together through that type of link. However, there is a link that we can use, which is called a logical link. And that's what our Mishnah, when it says Arba Avos Nazikin, uses when it says the word avos. And as the Gemara said, avos miklal that Yika told us, the fact that it used the word av means that there's children. Children means that there's a logical derivative from what is written to what is not written. So for instance, as we mentioned, that's why I made these white symbols here. When it comes to Karen, which is an animal goring another animal, that's what it says clearly in the verse in the Torah, the Gemara explains to us that that verse represents a category of damage, meaning whenever an animal intends to do damage, then the owner of that animal has to pay for damage that was incurred. What does it mean, intend to do damage? The classic way an animal shows his intent to do damage is by goring another animal. In other words, he didn't get any benefit from the goring. Maybe his temper got a little bit quieted down, but he didn't. When he eats food, he gets physical benefit. Okay, he didn't do it accidentally, like when he walks into another person's field, because he did it quite intentionally. So this quality of Karen represents a categorical class of damage whenever an animal uses his animal instincts to do damage, then the owner is going to have to pay. So from there, the Gemara explains to us we can also derive Negifa, Neshicha, Ravitza, and Be'ita, which are called toldos. What does that mean? And an animal shoves another animal, or he bites another animal, or he squats on another animal, or he kicks another animal. They're also included in the law of the open verse of when an animal gores another animal. And those are called toldos. So that's another type of extension from what is written to the Torah to what's not written in the Torah, another type of decompression of information, which is called a tolda. Now those we can derive because they're logical extensions. But the Gezerah Shava is a handed down extension, which is only purely limited to what we have. Now, also here, the Rabbeinu Hananel explained in these cases that let's look at in these cases of medama menasech mosem mafagel. In those cases, which means that a person, a Kohen, has to eat his food in purity. If someone would throw a sheretz, a reptile, into his food, he would damage the food, he wouldn't be able to eat it anymore. How do we know that the din extends through that? So Rabbeinu Hananel says it's included in the category of man damaging a animal or property. Okay, when man damages an animal, there's no difference between if he damages an animal or he damages another person's storage silo. And so therefore, just like he has to pay. So those are logical derivatives of Mava.
Right. If Mava is, the Gemara has a question what Mava is, right?
Yes, that's going to be a big question in Mava. Right now, let's learn according to Rav that Mava is man. Okay, make it simple. Okay. So what I wanted to demonstrate here is we have three ways of decompression. We have one called the Gezerah Shava, which means that we have a handed-down Masorah from Moshe Rabbeinu through all the generations that a similar word in two different Pesukim acts as a bridge or a link which connects and moves the law from one place to the next, like this word Yishalem, moving to Keren, or for the word Tachas, moving from Keren over to Tsar, or to Onis. There's another way that we expand the information through a logical formula, which means that if you share the quality of the written case, in this case, if you have Kavanah Hagzik, the written case is the case of Goring, which is a written case. If you share that quality, then also you'll have the same law that you'll be responsible to pay, and that's how we can include Nekifa and Neshicha, or we can make an analogy between a man damaging an animal and a man damaging property and say that there's no real difference between the two. So just as Imam had seen, just like you have to pay here, you have to pay here. But those are based on logical connections, and simple logical connections, and not halacha. So that's what we wanted to demonstrate with this chart. Now, we go a step further. Okay? When we investigate this case here, Bor, see if I can make that a little bigger for you. Now, in Bor, we're going to look at the Pesukim in a while, but I'm just going to tell you outside. In Bor, it says, the Baal HaBor Yishalem Kesiv Yashiv L'Ba'alav. That's what the pasuk says. The owner of the pit who damaged another person, fell into it, has to pay with Kesiv, with money, which he returns to the owner of the animal. Let's say an animal fell into the pit. Okay, so here, in the case of paying for the damage of your pit, the Gemara adds Kesef. That means you can pay with money. And we have a Ribui, which means since there's an extra word, we have yet another decompression of an idea, which is not only you can pay with Kesef, with money, but you can pay with anything that has value. Even the Gemara says, afilu subin, even bran. Bran is a key word, which means a movable object that has practically no value. It has value, but in order to give a person $100 of bran, you have to give them stacks and stacks of bran. It's not something that everybody would love to have or want to have in exchange for money. However, it is worth something. It's just that you have to give them a lot of sacks of bran to equal the amount of damage that you did. So through the process of Ribui, an extra word, we're taught that not only can you give Kesef back to the person who you damaged, but you can also pay him with any movable items that have monetary value. Now, of course, if the item doesn't have any value at all, like you give him a glass of water, let's say, or 10 gallons of water, which have no value, so of course you can't pay with that. But any item that does have value, even like bran, which means you'd have to give him sacks of bran, it's not exactly what he would prefer to have. He'd prefer to have money so you can spend it, not sacks of bran. But the Torah says you can also pay with that. So here now we have a conflict in this case, because we just learned that from this Gezerah Shava, from Shein and Regel, that you must pay him with the best of your land. That's what it says, Meitav Karma, Meitav Sedeh, Meitav Karma, Yishalem. That din we just said moves through this whole spectrum of 28 cases, including Bor. And in Bor we have that you can pay with money and Shaveh Kesef, anything that has a money value. Why does that represent the problem? So Abaya explains that this is a contradiction, because when it's going to turn out now to pay back for your damage, we're going to have three different alternatives. You can pay with the best of your land, you can pay with money, and you can pay with subin, metaltalin, which is very low quality of movables. So Abaya says, wait a minute, when it came to land, the Torah said you have to pay with the best of your land. If you're now going to move this concept into board and then go back and spread it throughout all the other damages, by the way, we're going to have a contradiction. Because why, when it came to land, did the Torah specify if you're going to pay with land, it must be the best? Whereas when you give your movable objects, you can give absolutely the worst. Wouldn't you expect that you can either give the worst of your land or the best of your movables? Here we have a contradiction between the two items. So that is going to be the focus of our Iyun piece. But I'm going to just give a general introduction, believe it or not, to how the system of Torah works. Now, we have a new concept here called contradiction. Normally, when people see contradiction, they say, well, the person wasn't speaking precisely. Now, of course, the Torah written by Kodesh Baruch Hu does not have contradiction. In other words, the contradiction is a way of encoding more information, telling us a new concept. So here, we cannot discover the message of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, because on one hand, he demands giving the best of the land, and the other hand, he says you can give the worst of your movables. That seems to be a contradiction. Either give the best of my movables or the worst of my land, but don't give the best of my land I have to do to pay back, the most valuable piece of property that I have if I'm going to pay back. Okay, and yet when it comes to movables, it's the worst. So that's a contradiction. So now in the Gemara, which is the next stage of decompressing the information, we have to understand how to solve that problem. Okay, so let's get back to our text here. Is the problem is clear here? Yeah? I hope so. Okay, let's get back here. There's one other problem that we have to discuss here, which we're going to go into this in depth. I'm just giving a brief, not so brief, but I'm giving a brief overview of what's going on here. I don't know if I mentioned, what we're going to do is integrate the books that we've been learning into the text. So we're always going to be using a text, and a method that I use in order to teach and also to learn, which I call visual logic, which is basically whenever a text comes to a period and the statement comes to an end, I just hit the enter key, and if the next statement is a continuation of that idea or an explanation of the idea, so I can keep it on the same line. But if it's a kasha or a difficulty, I move it over one, and if there's a kasha on the kasha, I move it over again. So here's that's what I do with visual logic. Now, the Ramchal, which we've discussed at length, gives us a set of function words. That means to do words which teach us what the Gemara is doing at any one stage. Things are either a statement, or it's a difficulty, or a resolution of a difficulty. It's a proof, or a contradiction, or a question or an answer. Those are the basic operating words which represent the process of debate in the Gemara. So I just, in this particular example, just ran these words along the side. So we have the text and we can keep track of the argumentation. So I mentioned, and this is what I'm going to show you inside now, Ramile Abaya L'Rava. This is the Gemara text. Excuse me. Abaya threw one verse against the next. Arumia means to take one text, in this case it's going to be a verse in the Chumash, to juxtapose it to a next, to throw it next to another one, to throw it into another one, to show a contradiction. Through that contradiction, we're going to now open up a deeper level of understanding. So what was the text? Ramilei Abaya L'Rava. Kasiv meitav sadehu meitav karmo yishalem. We just saw that the Torah, when it came to writing about Shane and Rego, said you must pay with the best of your land and the best of your vineyard. So Abaya makes a inference. Meitav in midiachrin lo must mean that you must pay with the best of your land. You cannot use anything else. V'hai Tanya, but yet we have a brisa that says yashiv, the word yashiv, in bor, remember, kesef yashiv l'ba'alav, is l'rabos to add a new din of shaveh kesef, afilu subin. So on one hand, the Torah demands the best payment you can get, which is the best of your land. On the other hand, the Torah opens up payment to the absolute worst movables that you can have. Now, remember, it does have the value, but it's the absolutely worst value. So that was a rumia, okay, contradiction, akasha, from the two verses with an inference. And now we have a set of terutzim, okay? So we have the first teretz is lo kasha kan midaita kan bal korcho. Okay? If you don't take the person to Beit Din and you just settle quietly out of court, you can pay with the worst of your land, with the worst of your movables. But if you take him to court and you force him to go through this whole judicial process and you don't admit that you hurt him, so then if you lose the case, then you're going to have to pay with the best of your land. That's the first excuse me, teretz of the Gemara, the first explanation. Okay. Ula tries to give a lie to the fact because Ula Bereder Rev Eli, you can make an inference that that's the correct teretz to this kasha because it says Yishalem. Balabor Yishalem, you must pay, or Meitav Karka, Meitav Sadehu Yishalem. Yishalem, he wants to say, means Bal Korcho, you must. Why must you? Because you took him to court. So if you take him to court and you don't settle out of court, so you're going to have to pay with the best. Abaya objects to that, and he's through a grammatical objection. It says, it doesn't say Yishulam, which would more mean Yishulam through, which is a passive, means the base din would force you to pay him money. It says Yishalem. That means that you're doing it willfully. So he disagrees with the first position. Now we go through a whole set of Gemaras here. Okay, I'm just trying to very briefly set up the floor. We're going, the situation. As I keep saying, we're going to go into this deeply. The Gemara brings the fourth answer. The fourth answer is from Rav Papa. Ella ki asi Rav Papa Rav Huna Bereder Rav Yeshua mi bei Rav. When both these two sages came, that's Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bereder Yeshua, came from the the study hall of Rav. They explained this seeming contradiction, per shua. How did they do it? Kol mile meitavhu. All movables are called meitav. Wait a minute, Subin, we said, seems to be the worst type of repayment. He says just the opposite of what you would have thought. Really, all movables, even Subin, are called meitav. Why? The I mizdaben hacha, mizdaben b'masach, the lo mizdaben hacha, mizdaben b'masach risa. Because if you can't sell it here, you can always sell it somewhere else. Labar mi'ara, this comes to exclude land. Land is not really, all types of land is not called the best. Why? The leisiv le meitav, you must give it from meitav, in order to encourage people to buy. Okay, we have to spell this out a little, but basically what he does is turns the tables on us, and he says, really, if we look at the bechina, the factor of getting the person who was that when he wants to get his money back, so and if he has movables, he can always, if he can't find a buyer here, he can also go to another place in the city and sell brand somewhere else. So he'll always be able to get his money back, if not here, from somewhere else. But land, you're pretty well you sell it to the people who are interested in your little neighborhood. Okay. So therefore, land has a limited amount of buyers. So if you want to pay back for your damages in the land, then you should pay back with the very best of your land, and that will encourage people to buy it from you, because everybody likes a good piece of land. That's what Rev Papa and Rev Yeshua said. Okay, now, then the Gemara brings a statement of Rev Huna. Actually, did you see these three dots here? They're going to be very significant, but the Gemara has a very large break for a page and a half, I think. And then all of a sudden it comes back with Rev Huna, a statement of Rev Huna, and he says, Rev Huna Omer, O Kesev O Meitav. When you want to pay for your damage, you can do it with either Kesev or with Meitav. Or with Meitav. Meitav normally you would think means the best of your land. So again, we have here Rav Nachman asks, Esvei Rav Nachman the Rav Huna. Rav Nachman asks Rav Huna, wait a minute, how can you say that you must either use Meitav, the best of your land, or money, when we all know the brisa that says Yashiv l'Rabba Shavit Kesev Afilu Subin, that the word Yashiv that we saw, an extra word in the case of Pit, comes to tell you that you can give back any type of movables, even the worst type of movables, which is bran. So Rav Huna said that there was two possibilities, either the best of your land and money. Rav Nachman said to him, wait a minute, there's a third possibility called Shavit Kesev. And there it's even the worst. What does he answer? Rav Huna hakub ma'askinon delesle. If you don't have Kesev or money, then you can pay back with the worst of metaltalin. That's how Rav Huna says. The Gemara says, wait a minute, Ida Leisle Peshita, very interesting statement. We have to investigate all these statements. If he doesn't have land, the best of his land, or Kesev, well, obviously he has to pay for his damage. If all he has is the worst of his metaltalin, called Subin, of course he could pay. So the Gemara produces a Havamina. Mahu Desema, what would you have thought? Amrinin lay, the person who was damaged could say to the person who wants to pay back for the damage, Zil Tarach Vazavin, you go to these other places, sell your brand, and you come back to me. Va'ase le Kesef, bring me Kesef, Kamash Mulan. Okay. Now, that's a Gemara that we're going to investigate very, very deeply. That'll be the key focus of our investigation. But basically, what we see here is that there is three methods of paying back. You can either use the best of your land. You can either pay back with kesef, or you can pay back with metalton. Now, the next level we have to investigate in our very long introduction, but it's very, very necessary, is the level of the poskim. What is a poskim? And the Rishonim, by the way. That's the end of the Gemara. Now the question is,
right, so where does the Gemara leave off?
What do we do?
The Gemara leaves us off with a
The Gemara just
question.
leaves off with that, with Rev Huna.
Rav Huna, okay. That knows Rav Huna is the final psak with he's saying that it's either I kesef,
kesef, meitav.
I
If you
kesef,
don't
I
have that,
meitav.
then you can.
And we're saying that kesef or meitav, he really meant to say that if you don't have kesef or meitav, then you can pay with subin.
That's
Otherwise
it.
you
That's
have
what
to
he
steer it.
says.
But l'chatchila is supposed to be kesef or meitav.
Right. Now, let's just do a review. What did Rav Papa say? In other words, this is Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, if you have kesef or meitav, you must give it to repay. If you don't, you can play with subin. But what did, remember Rav Papa? Well, what did he say? What was his answer? Okay. Rav Papa, here he is. Reb Papa and Reb Yeshua, what did they say? They said, "Kol mile meitav hu, the lo mizdaven hacham mizdaven masa chrisa, lebar miara, the lesiv, the lesiv le meitav, ki hechi the kavas alei zvune."
Yeah, so they're holding that anything is all movable objects are considered meitav. So that he would
even
arguing with Rav Huna.
That's what it looks like.
Even subin is meitav.
Even subin is meitav. Why? Because
you could sell it somewhere
it's
else.
movable and you can sell it somewhere else. Exactly. Exactly. Now we're ready for the next level, which is the level of the Rishonim. The Rishonim now have to handle this Gemara and tell us what really is the conclusion. We have two conclusions in this Gemara. One conclusion is a Reb Papa, right, who says that subin meitav, that subin is the best. It's meitav, and land is the land is you must give the best, and you can't use the worst because since it's not movable, it has a chisron, it has a problem with it, and therefore you have to give the best. So the question is, between those two people, what's the halacha? So here we're going to see that there is a five-way disagreement between the great Rishonim on what do we actually do, Rabbi, when I want to pay back for my damage. Okay, so I have made a mathematical, just some mathematical figures, okay, just to express their halacha. Let's start first with Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam learns, first of all, that the halacha is like who? Rev Huna. Okay.
Which means lachatchila you have to give kesef or meitav, and metalton is not necessarily meitav.
Right. But look what he says. He says a very dramatic statement. He says really you have to give kesef or subin first. Counterintuitive what we thought the Gemara said simply, right?
So he's saying the halacha is like Rav Huna.
Papa.
Right, he's saying the halacha is like Rav Huna, but you could give kesef or subin. Okay. So then what is meitav?
And meitav is less than both of them. Meaning, meitav, if you do have land, that's the third position. If you don't have Kesef and Subin, then you can give the best of your land.
No,
And he says that's Peshat and Reb Huna.
But what he's saying is that Meitav means land. Then it doesn't mean metaltalin. Of course, if he's saying he give Kesef with Subin, what about any other metaltalin? Let's say you want to give an animal. Let's say you want to give, it would also be included in the Subin theoretically.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to get deeper.
Right. Okay. Then we have to understand
deeper than that.
Okay. All right.
We're going to have to understand exactly. We're going to dive in this.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, but first, I'm just going to give a mathematical explanation of what they say. Okay. But you're diving, and you must dive, and we're going to dive. The next person who we're going to investigate, next Rishon, is the Rif. Now, the Rif says the halacha is like Rev Papa. Now, Rev Papa said that Kol Mile Meitavu, so Kesef is equal to Subin, right? And the Torah said give the Mibar, excluding land, because people don't, run to get land only. You don't have enough konim, you don't have enough people buying it. So that's why we have to give Meitav. So the way the Rif learns is that these are three equal alternatives. Kesef or Subin, or the best of your land. Now, of course, you can't give the medium or worst quality of your land because there's not enough buyers. And the Torah doesn't want you to do that. The Torah wants the person who was damaged to get his money back. Okay, so there is a question of all three items are equivalent. Okay?
Okay.
Next. The next we have is the Ramah. The Ramah is also shown here. The Ramah. He says that the relationship is like this, that really Kesef is the best, or the first alternative that you must do. If you damage someone and you have all three, what do you pay with? Money. If you don't have money, then you pay with the worst of your property, movables. And if you don't have movables, then you pay with the best of your land. Okay? And he holds, Rachel Stavit, this is according to Nachal Stavit. Nachal Stavit explains to us that's the position of the Ramah, and he's holding Rav Papa. So we thought Rav Papa said that, all Rav Papa said is that Kol Metalton is Meitav. He did not talk about Kesef, did he, in his formula? He just said Kol Metalton is Meitav. Who? Because
Kol Mile Meitav.
Cancel it.
Right.
Kol Mile, he says.
Mile
Exactly.
Right.
Kol Mile, Kol things. All things are Meitav,
So
except for land.
Right. So how would he know that Kesef is better? Unless that's just a
Exactly.
svara. Maybe
Where does he get Kesef? Oh, exactly. Where do you get Kesef is better? That's a 100% correct question. But that's, again, we go from what they say to why they say it.
Right.
Okay? But this is what the Ramah, who's a Rishon, says. First, if you have all three, you must give Kesef. If you don't have Kesef, then you go to Subin. If you don't have Subin, then you go to Meitav. Fine. So let's go to the fourth Rishon here. That's the Rambam. Okay? The Rambam holds, and this is according to again in Nachal Stavit, that the halach is like Reb Papa. Okay, so Reb Papa, he wants to say. Now Reb Papa did not talk specifically about Kesef, correct? He just said Kol Mile Meitav.
Right. Right.
Okay, but the Rambam says that Subin is equal to Kesef. Kesef is not greater than Subin, it's equal to. And the only odd man out here is Meitav. Okay? So, land. Land is the only odd man out.
Right.
So really, Subin and Kesef are equal, and they're the greatest. And if you don't have, then you give Meitav. Okay? Now,
wait, so that, how come that's not like the, go back to the Rabbeinu Tam for a minute. The Rabbeinu Tam said that Meitav is better than Kesef and Subin?
Yes.
So in other words, the land is better.
Yeah,
Land
he
is
said
better
the
than money
vestibule
or
land is better. That's right.
right. Okay.
Which is not what we would simply say the Gemara was. So we're going to have to explain Rabbeinu Tam, right?
Right. Right.
But that's what he holds. He's the most, all these positions. So let's just the last position. The last position is which is an achron, the shach and the gro. Now we don't know who they're holding like, because they should be really basing themselves on Rishonim. Oh, excuse me, they are. They're holding like the Rambam. But they hold different than the Nachlas David. Now, the Nachlas David was a student of Chaim Volozhin, who was a student of the Gro, right? So he's
Right.
fighting. He's fighting the Gro. Okay. Ooh, look at that. I just have to plug in my machine.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
As long as it's not your battery that's running out, but the machine.
1 second. 1 second. What did I do to myself here? I had a whole big balagan happening. We're having technical problems. Just bear with us, and we'll be back in a second. Okay. There we go. Just 1 second. I'm just going to pull that in. There we go. Okay, great. There we go. That little error message went away. That's good to have error messages. Okay, so now the next generation here, I should have actually put them. I should have put the shach and the gro in front of them actually. But okay, the shach and the gro hold that the Rambam holds like Reb Huna and not like Reb Papa. Okay. Now, what did Reb Huna say? He said, "O kesef o meitav."
Right.
Okay. But look what they hold. They hold kesef and subin are equal.
Right.
And if you don't have them,
Then you can go to Meitav. So that's the same
no,
like
that's exactly the same. That's not good.
right.
Then we haven't gained anything. Then we haven't gained anything.
So we have to look at the text.
You're right. Okay, let's look at this. Maybe when we look down here, we'll see how that works. Okay. Now, that looks the same. It looks like it didn't add anything. So I'm going to have to look at the text itself. Let's go here to, now we're trying to bug in the program. Now we're going to enter a level called the level of the Achronim. What's the level of the Achronim? The level of the Achronim now have to explain to us why the various Rishonim, excuse me, that does mean the same thing, right? No, I made a mistake here. I didn't catch it myself. The Shach holds that the Rambam holds like Rav Huna. The Nachlas David holds that the Rambam holds like Rav Papa. I didn't catch it myself.
And they still, the result is the same. Okay.
In other words, we know what the Rambam says. The Rambam says you can give Kesef or Subin, and if you don't have them, then you give Meitav, right?
Right.
That's what he says. The only question is, who is he holding by?
Right. Is he holding like
Is he
Rav
holding
Huna
like
or
Rav
Rav Papa?
Papa or like Rav Huna?
But you're saying the result is the same. The halacha is going to run.
But the result is the same. Exactly. So we have actually here a four-way machlokus, Rishonim, and we have a machlokus achronim as far as who the Rambam is holding like. Is he holding like Rav Papa or is he holding Rav Huna? The Shach and the Gro says the Rambam is holding the Rav Huna, and Nachas David says Rav Papa. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. Now, we're now going to enter the level of Achronim. What do the Achronim do? The Achronim will explain to us why people held what they held. In other words, we know the facts. We know what the Gemara said. We know what the Rishonim said about the Gemara, but we don't know why the Rishonim said what they said about the Gemara. Okay? So that's the level of the Achron. Okay, so now let's go down to that next level. Now, we're going to do, believe me, I did not do this. I'm sure you do believe me. But this is all work done by the Nachlas David, okay? But what I did is I arranged it now into syllogisms. We're learning all the time with the Ramchal about syllogisms. So I arranged it into a set of syllogisms, and I wanted to bring out how the Achronim solve these problems. Okay. Now, in theory, let's talk about theory for a second. The Darkei Gemara says, whenever you learn, you always have to think first. What does that mean? After you read what a person says, then you have to say, well, does that make sense? Okay? That's a very important move. You first have to ask yourself, does it make sense? Because people are either, if it makes sense, or why do they have to say it? And if it doesn't make sense, so then how did they say it? So that's a very, very basic starting position. It's called thinking yourself.
He also says that you have to assume that when whoever's speaking makes sense because they know what they're talking about.
At least the Chachamim.
Right. All right. Okay. You're right. Okay.
On a bus, I don't know. I mean, you do give people kafskos on a bus, but I found that many times 2 and 2 does equal 5.
Right.
When dealing with people. Anyway, so what did I do here? I did an interesting exercise. Okay. Interesting exercise. We have 3 possibilities of paying back for damages. One is with the best of your land. The other one is the worst of your movables. And the third one is kesef. So I said to myself, how many different variations, and we know that there's a contradiction between at least kesef and meitav. Excuse me, at least meitav and subin. Okay. So how many different possibilities could we have when we're talking about priority of payment? Okay. So the first set is to say that the payments go laterally. That means if you have all 3 of them, you can pay either one, meitav, subin, or kesef. Correct? That's the first possibility.
Right.
And that happens to be the possibility I wrote up here of Rashi, the Rosh, the Rif, Rav Papa. Okay, there's a whole bunch of people going to have to analyze that. But they, as we see, there's people that hold that if you have all 3, then they're equal. Now, what happens if we say that there's a priority of first, second, and third? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possibilities if we hold it as a priority. These 2 we start with kesef, these 2 we start with subin, this one we start with meitav, and these 3 we start with meitav. Okay? Indeed, we saw that this constellation of the Ramah holds first kesef, then subin, then meitav. The question is, well, why did he, or why would anyone want to eliminate these other possibilities? Okay. Then there's a third constellation of cases here, of possibilities, and that means that 2 of them are more important than the third. So we could have here meitav and subin on top, kesef and meitav on top, kesef and subin on top. Okay. And we saw that there's certain people do say, oh, kesef or meitav, like Rav Huna said, and if you don't have it, then you do subin. Okay? And there's even a possibility that someone would say Suman or Kesef are equal, like Reb Papa. And if you don't have it, then Meitav. Okay. Then we have the last possibility, which is one of the three items must be given first, and the other two can be given second. So either Kesef could be first, then Suman and Meitav. Meitav is first, and Meitav and Kesef. Those are all the logical possibilities. Okay. Now, why? What we have to ask ourselves is, why are these possibilities eliminated? And everybody agrees that there's certain possibilities that don't come into the picture. Okay. Now we can eliminate them because they don't make sense, or we can eliminate them because they don't follow anyone's opinion. Okay. So, for instance, if we say that that if you have all three, you must pay with Suman and Meitav of land, and Kesef is the worst. That's counterintuitive. To say Kesef is the worst form of payment when we're saying that metaltalin, according to Reb Papa, metaltalin is as good as Kesef because you can always find a buyer, or Meitav, and therefore the Torah says Meitav, so you'll find buyers. Well, Kesef is the goal of finding a buyer, isn't it? So that's not common sense to put Kesef as a default. In other words, pay with Suman Kesef. Okay, so the other possibilities have to be either the text in front of us of Reb Papa, or there's a third possibility, external text. So we said what we did here is we first spelt out all the logical possibilities, and now what we want to do is eliminate. Okay, eliminate. Why are these possibilities eliminated, and boil it down to the ones that we do have, and then understand why, on what basis the ones that we do have remain. Again, work that we're going to do. This is, believe it or not, an overview. Okay, so let's get down to the series of formulas. I once was teaching a class at the yeshiva, and so on, kids, kids would come, groups would come by, and want to understand what was going on. So one kid said to him, "Mas matematica?" So, was it mathematics? So the answer is, we're dealing in logic here.
Right.
That's exactly it. We're dealing with logic. People think that religion is emotionality. Well, maybe for the Goyim it is emotionality because they don't have to argue about that. But for us, we're trying to understand clearly what Kadosh Baruch Hu has to say, and we're going to prove our case. We're not just going to emotionalize about it. We'll say, oh, we'll explain to you why what we're saying is really the word of Hashem. Okay, so we're going to now go through some interesting possibilities. Are you with me still? Okay.
I am. Follow along.
What? It's everything here is 2 and 2 is 4. There's not going to be no surprises, except if something falls out of my head, which is possible. Okay.
We may have a disagreement. I haven't looked at the text yet. Once we look at the text, we may have a disagreement and have to learn how to
once you look at the text, everything's going to be fine. Right. Now, the reason why I'm doing this...
I'm saying the other way around. You're putting down all of these assumptions based on the way you learn Pshat. Maybe we'll have we'll have a different Pshat in the
wonderful
in the Nachlas David.
Exactly. And again, we're just trying to understand what is being done here. You see, what is being done, and what each generation has to do in order to clarify the information for us. And it's like I mentioned many times, when we learned the times table, it was all in our heads. If you ask a child nowadays to do 4 times 3, he has to pull out his iPad or calculator and start doing 4 times 3. Nothing is in the head. So all these calculations, as you go further back, were done in people's heads. But since this is Kadnas Adoros, so people are thinking less and less and less, and relying on external computers to do their work. So what we have to do is understand how the information is put together, and it's all done in the head, but we're going to use these visual methods in the Ramchal to make the complex arguments into very simple syllogisms. Okay, and I'll give it the basis of learning. That's my purpose. Okay, let's look at Rabbeinu Tam. We said Rabbeinu Tam holds this constellation, that Meitav, Subin, and Kesev are alternatives. If you have all three, you can use either one. So, and we also said that Rabbeinu Tam is going to be holding like Rav Papa. Okay, so in the end, is that true? Yeah. Okay, so let's see how he does it. Let's see how he does it. Okay. So we say the following. We have now two things. We're going to, again, as I just gave a brief introduction, we're always going to talk about intuitive common sense, and we're going to talk about text. And those things are going to balance or fight with each other sometimes. So let's just see these syllogisms. Okay? Now, there's a Gemara which I must explain. Again, everything is outside here. We have to go through the text together, and we will, Blinetta, but right now you'll just have to believe me. There's a Gemara they bring from Kesuvas that Kesev is better than Meitav. That's what they bring. We're going to be into that Gemara, we're going to investigate that Gemara, but let's say that's the conclusion, that if you have Kesev and Meitav, then you should pay with Kesev. Okay, unlike Rav Huna, which we just simply said, you Kesev or Meitav. But the Gemara in Kesubas says, no, Kesev is in fact greater than Meitav. Now, if you hold that Gemara is not applicable to our case, that's talking about a different case altogether and has no relationship to what we're talking about here in damages. It's Kesubas, paying back for a woman paying back for a man paying an office Kesuba. Okay, so if you say that Gemara is not applicable, so you're going to learn that Kesev is equal to Meitav, and that Subin is equal to Kesev. How do we know that Subin is equal to Kesev? Because we have the Brisa that says that Kesev Yoshiv L'Ba'alav. And the presumption here is that the ribui of Shavet Kesev is equal to the Kesev itself. Is that clear what I just said? In other words, the Pasuk said in Bor, Kesev Yoshiv L'Ba'alav. You should, if you want to pay back for your damages, pay back with Kesev, which you should return to the owner of the object that you destroyed. So what does it mean, a ribui? A ribui means it's an extra word in the Torah which comes to include another case. So even though it's said in black and white, it said only money, but it said Kesev Yoshiv, which included Subin. So the simple way to learn a ribui is that Kesev and Subin are alternatives. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So if we say Kesubas is not applicable, and Kesev is equal to Meitav, and Subin is equal to Kesev, so then Subin should be equal to Meitav, logically, right?
Right.
That contradicts, and that's Abaya's kasha. That's why Abaya said this doesn't make sense. Because in common sense, says Abaya, Subin should be less than Meitav. How do we know that? Because Abaya said, remember, Meitav in Mile Achrina Lo. He made a logical inference from what the pasuk said. The pasuk said, "Meitav sedei, meitav karmi yishalem." So Abaya said, "Meitav in mili achrina lo," and he said, "Yet it says subin l'rabos shavakesiv," and that he could not put together. It seems, in other words, if we looked at Abaya's way of handling these three items, he would say the best of the land is meaning that you can't just give middle and bad land, right? And certainly, if you can't give land, then you can't give the worst of your metaltalin. So the way he is learning is that Subin is worse than Meitav. Now, if we were going to take this another level, which we will be doing, believe me, you have to now spell out all the possibilities in land. Land, you have the best of land, you have medium land, and you have the worst of your land, correct? Now, when it comes to movables, you also have great movables, you have medium movables, and the worst movables. Now, why do you say one movable is better than the next? Because of the amount of people who want them. If you have an iPod nowadays, that's a very hot item, right? You'll be selling those things very, very quickly. If you want to sell your iPod, you can probably, get your kesef back very quickly. But if you have an old 8080 computer, I don't know, it may be worth money somewhere in Africa, but it's not. You're going to have to, work pretty hard to get your money back if someone gives you a whole warehouse of PCs from 1984. Okay, so we're going to have to investigate it. But right now, again, let's just keep it simple in simple logical terms. This formula, which says kesef is equal to meitav and subin is equal to kesef, must mean subin is equal to meitav doesn't make any sense in logic to Abaya. He says meitav, if you're going to have to give the best of the land, how can you give the worst of your produce? Very good. Now, Abaya, we had four answers. We didn't go through all of them, but the last answer we said was Reb Papa. And Reb Papa said, wait a minute. I agree with you in premise number one. Let's keep Kesubas out of this. There's no, even though in Kesubas, kesef is better than meitav when, paying back for your Kesuba, when it comes to damages, kesef is equal to meitav. And we have to keep this premise also, that a ribui means that what you included, in this case, Shavak Kesef, is equal to what was stated specifically. So therefore, Subin has to be equal to Kesef. And we came to the conclusion then that Subin is equal to Meitav. Well, that's a logical, that's a hekesh, that's a logical conclusion. But Abaya didn't like that. Why? Because he said in Svara, Meitav is better than Subin. So what we're going to do now, according to Reb Papa, is going to change what you thought was logical. And we're going to tell you, something? We're going to tell you that Subin is equal to Meitav. That's what we're going to tell you. Why is Subin equal to Meitav? Okay. Why is Subin equal to Meitav? Because he said, Reb Papa, he said that you can owe, what do we really want? We really want money.
So you can always exchange it.
You can always exchange it. So since you want money and you'll always get your money from Subin, you'll always exchange it. And since the Torah said meitav of your land, because you want to exchange it to money, so then they're all equal. In other words, I can get my money for the damage. The best way is you give me money. That's what I really want, as the person who was injured. But Meitav and Subin, there's a lot of buyers for Subin. If I can't find one here, I'll find somewhere else. And Meitav, there's a lot of buyers because, wow, good piece of land everybody's interested in. So even if there's few buyers around, they're all jumping at this hot property to buy. So Rabbeinu Tam holds like Reb Papa, and he says, learns the Gemara that Subin is equal to Kesef, and Kesef is equal to Meitav. That's how he learns. Okay. Let's look at the Ramah. Okay. What's going to change here? Well, here we're going to say that the Gemara in Kesubas that said that Kesef is better than Meitav is linked, remember we talked about nodes and linked, is linked to our case. Now we're going to have to investigate that more deeply. Is it linked? Is it not linked? Why is it linked? Okay, but let's just learn very simply mathematically. If the law in Kesubas that Kesef is greater than Meitav is applicable to our case of damages, so then Kesef is greater than Meitav. Now, if we say that a ribui means whatever is included in the extra word is equal to whatever is stated clearly, so then Subin is equal to Kesef, correct?
Yeah.
That we're going to keep. And therefore, Subin is greater than Meitav. That's a hekesh, correct?
Right, so again, so
Kesef
we're saying
is greater
that
than Meitav,
Kesef
Subin.
is greater than Meitav, and Subin is equal to Kesef, then Subin has to be greater than Meitav. Right.
Hekesh.
Right.
Then that was Abaya's, according to the Ramah, that's Abaya's question, because in Svara, Subin is less than Meitav.
Subin
Even though
is
logically,
less than Meitav.
Subin is less than Meitav in
Yeah,
Svara.
why is
In
that?
other words, Meitav mida chreni lo. If you tell me the best of your land, you can't say the best of your land is equal to the worst of your movables. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense.
in Abaya, because
So,
Rav Papa may hold not like
That's
that.
Abaya.
Right, 'cause Rav
Oh,
Papa,
exactly. Remember, Abaya is asking the kasha.
right.
Rav Papa is giving his
Ah,
answer.
so is it the question is that Subin should be less than Meitav, and it comes out that Subin is greater than Meitav, so then Rav Papa could answer without looking that no, Subin is better than Meitav because it's metal. It's mila kal mila Meitav.
Exactly. But let's see which one of these premises change according to the Ramah.
Right.
Okay? So the Ramah holds that Kesubas is applicable. You see what we did here? There's what's, and this is what I want to bring out. There's common sense. There's the text in front of us saying something to us, a chiddush, and then there's other text which may impact on our text.
Right.
And this is exactly what has to be done in the learning process. You have to know. You have to start with the basis of common sense. What would you say? Which one is greater? What does the text say and why? And how is our text related to other texts?
Right.
Okay? Now, again,
Right. Well,
this
that's
is a
what. That's
demonstration.
going back to the Darkei Gemara. That's what he said before you see the Mefarshim. You're supposed to think about it yourself before you look at Rashi.
Exactly. But then you have to see the Meforshim both here and everywhere else. Okay?
Right.
Now, our little small minds, at least my small mind, cannot encompass more than a little bit of common sense now, or what's in front of me. But now I have to know what's not in front of me. Now, to do that, what we're going to have to do is either a lot of Bikiyas, like, and remember everything, or watch how the Rishon at least put the nodes and the links together and tell us which Gemaras are relevant. Okay? But whatever it is, this is a demonstration. So let's say now we have remember the Ramah. The Ramah's position is going to be that Kesef is number 1, Subin is number 2, and Meitav is number 3. If you have all three, you must give Kesef. If you only have Subin and Meitav, you must give Subin, and only if you don't have Kesef and Subin, you have to have Meitav. So let's see how that works. Now, which premise changed here? So according to the Ramah, the premise that Kesuvas is applicable remains, which means that Kesuvus impacts on our case, and Kesed is always greater than
Meitav.
the best of your land. Okay? But here he says a tremendous chiddush. This premise he changes. We said that if the Torah is going to add another case, right, it should be equivalent to the stated case. So it says Kesef Yoshiv L'Ba'alav. That means that the Shavik Kesef of the Yoshiv should be equivalent to the Kesef, correct? Comes along the Ramah and it says not necessarily so. It is possible that a derivative of a ribui can end up to be less than the stated case, and that's the premise he changes. He says a ribui, as I wrote over here, can be less than what's written mafarish. So it could turn out that subin is actually less than kesef. And that's a tremendous chiddush, but that's what he says. If that's true, then subin is less than kesef. Kesef, it says kesef yoshiv l'ba'alav. The first thing is kesef. Yoshiv means if you don't have kesef, you give subin. And subin is greater than meitav.
Why? Because who says there's no hechrich there? Because if subin is less than kesef, even though kesef is greater than meitav, but maybe subin is equal to meitav.
Right.
Maybe subin is less than
We don't know. Okay, but why would you say that subin is? Why would you say that subin is greater than meitav?
Yeah. I don't know.
Because if I now, again in Svara, we have to talk in Svara.
Oh, so now we have a svara that says that
many-
only the meitav.
Exactly, called mile meitavu. And when the Torah, when Reb Papa told us about meitav, it increased the amount of buyers, but never up to the amount of buyer that Subin was. Called mile meitavu. Barmi karka is never going to be called meitav. It's going to be a second best. If you don't have it, of course, we're going to have to give it to you. Okay? So he'll come out with a constellation of cases that meitav is less than subin. In other words, kesef is your first obligation to pay back with if you have all three. If you don't have kesef, use your second best, because subin is less than kesef, because a ribui can be less. And meitav, Reb Papa says, call mile meitavu. Bar mi'ara. Ara is not meitav b'chlal. It's if you don't have subin and kesef, so okay, you have to give the best of your land, because what are you going to do? It's you have nothing else. But in priority, it's not there, and that will be the psak of the Ramah. Okay.
Very good.
Let's go through Abaya.
Yeah, sure. I think I think I need to stop already. I have to go to.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. This is. Oh wow. We're really going fast. Okay. Beseda. Anyway, I think I'm demonstrating my position here, right?
Right.
That you must understand the method of decompressing the information, opening the information. And the only way to do it is to learn how the masters of learning do it, and then you'll understand what the ball game is about. Without it, if you just want to play the game yourself, they say you can argue with Tosfos, but you're a fool if you do. You have to be involved in the problems,
Right.
understand what's at stake, and then after you understand what's at stake, then you could say something that's responsible and meaningful. Okay, so we'll end here.
Okay.
And we're almost through with our introduction. Once we just finish this little chart, we're ready really to go into it. I've done some fantastic things, which I must show you next week. We're going to start with the Chumash, and you could do it yourself. Take the Chumash, take the text, and start yourself doing some visual logic. And I want to see what comes out of it. We're going to see how, when we exhaust our logical analysis of the Chumash, we're ready to handle the Mishnah, and we resource to our logical analysis of the Mishnah, already handled the Gemara, and when we exhaust our logical understanding of the Gemara, we already have the Rishonim, and so on, so on, so on. Okay? That's what it's all about.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds exciting.
Have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Take care. Okay, bye. Take care, Ellie.
you're gonna save. I hope we save all that. Okay.
What? Oh, the share? Yeah, I got the share.
Yeah. Great.
I don't have to edit it because I don't have to split it, so I'll send it over pretty soon.
Oh yeah, great. Have a great day.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Call